Hi, welcome back to Sermons by Dale Dudgeon. I hope you're having a good day. For today's devotional thought, I'd like to continue in Paul's Doxology, hymn of praise, in Ephesians 3:14 through 21. And we are on verse 19. Yesterday we talked about the first half of Ephesians 3:19. Ephesians 3:19 says this, and to know the love of Christ, which passeth knowledge, that ye might be filled with all the fullness of God. It was Paul's prayer for the Ephesians that they would know the love of Christ, which passes knowledge. Now, yesterday we talked about the idea of passing knowledge. Today we're going to look at the last part of that verse where he says, that ye might be filled with the fullness of God. This idea of the fullness is a big concept in some of Paul's epistles. If we look in the book of Colossians chapter 1, verses 15 through 19, it tells us this, who is the image of the invisible God, the firstborn of every creature, for by him were all things created, that are in heaven and that are in the earth, visible and invisible, whether they be thrones or dominions or principalities or powers, all things were created by him and for him. And he is before all things, and by him all things consist. He is the head of the body, the church, who is the beginning, the firstborn from the dead, that in all things he might have the preeminence. And it pleased the Father that in him should all fullness dwell. The idea of the fullness in the Colossian letter is the idea of everything that is between God and man. They had a heresy in the city of Colossae that said there were many semi-divine beings that existed between God and man that were sort of go-betweens or emissaries. And there was sort of a hierarchy of divine beings that existed between God and man, and Jesus was just one of those. Paul sets the record straight in Colossians chapter 1, verse 19, when he says, for it pleased the Father that in him all fullness should dwell. Now, Jesus is the emissary between God and man. He is the go-between between God and man. He's the bridge between those of us here on earth and our Heavenly Father. It's all in Jesus. You know, he created everything. By him all things consist. He's the head of the body, and he's the firstborn from among the dead. And in him all the fullness dwells. Now we go back to Ephesians 3:19. What did Paul say? That ye might be filled with all the fullness of God. What is the fullness of God? Well, that's Jesus. He's our go-between, between we earthly creatures and our Heavenly Father. And Paul wants the Ephesians to experience being filled with Christ. And as we're filled with Christ, we get closer to our Heavenly Father. And I hope you think about that today, and hope that God blesses you and yours until we can talk together again.